Bears fans, something wild is happening in Chicago. A team everybody thought needed years is suddenly turning into a real threat, and the craziest part? It's happening faster than anyone expected. The rebuild that once felt impossible is finally starting to explode. And today, we're talking about 3 unbelievable moves that flipped this team into a playoff contender almost overnight. Let's get into it. People have argued about Ryan Poles since the day he took the job. Some loved the rebuild. Some hated the patience. But Poles always said one thing: this was going to take time. And now, we're finally seeing the rewards of a real, ground-up reset. The Bears didn't get here by luck. These are smart, calculated moves that are shaping the identity of this team. And one of the biggest surprises of all starts with a guy nobody saw coming. But before we break it all down, if you love seeing the Bears on top of the NFC North, make sure you subscribe, hit that like button, and tap the bell icon so you never miss a Bears update. Your support pushes the channel forward and helps bring more Chicago content to you every day. Alright, let's talk about the steal of the year. Nahshon Wright. Let that name sink in. This man went from being viewed as a camp body to becoming one of the most impactful defensive players on this roster. His journey is pure next man up energy, no shortcuts, no hype, just straight grind and heart. Before Chicago, he bounced between Dallas and Minnesota. Nothing major. No stardom. No spotlight. Just another name on the depth chart. Then he landed in Chicago with something to prove. At 6 feet 4 inches and 200 pounds, he brings length you almost never see in a defensive back. That's edge rusher height playing corner, and he uses every inch of it. At 27 years old, right in his prime, he's showing the entire league that you can't quit on a player who still has fire left. Drafted 99th overall in 2021, once a wide receiver, and now stepping into a role that nobody predicted, he's turning size, speed, and instincts into real production. The numbers he's putting up? The word Pro Bowl suddenly doesn't sound crazy anymore. And trust me, when you see his full stat line this season, you're going to realize just how important he's become to this defense. So stick around, because it gets even better from here. Stay with me, and this is where his story turns from interesting to unbelievable. This season, he's stacked up numbers that don't just look good, they jump off the page. Nearly 50 total tackles, more than 30 of them solo, 5 interceptions, double-digit pass breakups, tackles for loss, fumble recoveries, he's everywhere. And the wildest part? He's sitting at the top of the league leaderboard with his own teammate in interceptions. That's not luck. That's instinct and pure football IQ. What makes it even crazier is where he came from. Just last year, he wasn't a rising starter, he was buried on a practice squad in Minnesota, barely touching the field, fighting for a place in the league. 1 game played. 1 chance to be seen. But those practice reps? They were priceless. Imagine lining up every week against Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and T.J. Hawkinson, one of the most explosive offensive groups in football. Those battles sharpened him, toughened him, and forced him to adapt to elite-level players every single day. Some players break under that pressure. Wright grew from it. Those reps turned into confidence. That confidence turned into production. And that production turned into opportunity. Chicago picked him up on a tiny, prove-it contract. No guarantees. No spotlight. Just a chance. And he took that chance and exploded with it. The Bears trusted what the coaches saw in him, his length, his mentality, his upside, and that trust is paying off in a massive way. Wright isn't just filling a role, he's transforming the entire rhythm of this defense. Look at what he's doing on that kind of contract. Look at how much impact he's delivering for so little investment. It's one of the most efficient pickups of the entire season. And when you step back and see the journey from almost forgotten to one of the biggest playmakers on the roster, it makes his rise even more incredible. And the crazy part? Chicago is getting this level of production for almost nothing. Wright has held the secondary together while Jalen Johnson and Kyler Gordon dealt with injuries, and he's done it with the kind of confidence you expect from a long-term starter. If the Bears don't lock him up soon, his price is going to skyrocket because the league is definitely paying attention now. But let's shift to the next surprise name making noise in Chicago. DeMarco Jackson. A linebacker most fans barely mentioned a few months ago, suddenly one of the most important depth pieces on this defense. Jackson came in with a background that fits perfectly with what the Bears want to build. He spent time learning under Dennis Allen, which means he walked into Chicago already familiar with many of the principles and standards this defense preaches. That familiarity made him an instant fit. At 6 feet 1 inch and around 230 pounds, he isn't the towering presence you see in someone like Tremaine Edmonds, but he brings something else: range, urgency, and a clear understanding of where to be and when to be there. Drafted by the Saints back in 2022 out of Appalachian State, Jackson didn't arrive in Chicago with a big name. He arrived with experience, with toughness, and with a mentality that made the coaching staff believe he could help right away. And he did. Thrown into action when the linebacker room was falling apart, he stepped up against Pittsburgh in a way that turned heads. Special teams? Reliable. Defense? Ready. Jackson showed he wasn't just a warm body, he was a player who understood the moment and rose to it. 20-plus tackles, key stops, and a pass breakup don't tell the whole story. What matters is how he's contributing: steady, disciplined, and exactly the kind of under-the-radar addition that good franchises capitalize on. Jackson is proving that sometimes the most valuable players aren't the stars, they're the ones who stay ready for whatever the team needs. And if you thought his regular stats were solid, wait until you hear what he did when Chicago needed him most. Against Pittsburgh, while the linebacker room was basically held together with tape, DeMarco Jackson delivered one of the most explosive performances of the season. 15 tackles. Flying sideline to sideline like he'd been waiting his whole career for that moment. No flashy interceptions, no highlight reel turnovers, just pure, tough, old-school linebacker football. Exactly what the Bears needed that night. And remember, Chicago is paying him almost nothing. A near-minimum contract for a player who walked into his first start and played like a veteran who's been in the system for years. When a guy on a budget outplays players who make 10 times his salary? That's not luck. That's elite roster building. But he's not the only steal. Wright is playing at a Pro Bowl level. Jackson stepped in and dominated. And yet, we still haven't touched the biggest spark plug of them all. Because the third move Ryan Poles made this year wasn't just smart football, it was culture-changing. C.J. Gardner Johnson. If there was one thing the Bears lacked early in the season, it was fire. Energy. A voice. Someone who pulls everyone into the fight. Gardner Johnson came in and lit the room up the moment he arrived. At 5 feet 11 inches, around 210 pounds, he plays far bigger than his frame. Drafted by New Orleans in 2019, familiar with Dennis Allen's complex defensive structure, and built for chaos, this is the kind of player you bring in when you need attitude and impact at the same time. And Chicago desperately needed both. With injuries hitting the secondary hard, Kyler Gordon, Tariq Stevenson, Jalen Johnson, the entire back end was scrambling. Yet Gardner Johnson stepped in like a veteran who'd been here for years, stabilizing the group and injecting confidence into a defense that needed direction. 20 tackles. 13 solo. 3 sacks. Forced fumbles. Recoveries. Game-changing plays when the team had no room for error. He hasn't just filled a role. He's completely shifted the tone of the defense. And that, more than anything, shows why these pickups are more than good signings. They're the reason the Bears are still punching, still fighting, and still believing this season isn't over. And the craziest part of Gardner Johnson's story? He's been on 4 different teams in just 1 year. 4. Most players would fall apart bouncing around like that. Some never recover. But instead of folding, he looked in the mirror, reset himself, and found a way to grow from it. When he spoke after earning the game ball a couple weeks ago, you could hear something different in his voice: ownership, maturity, and a real appreciation for the chance he has in Chicago. He talked about falling in love with football again. And you can see it in the way he plays. The locker room feels it too. Teammates respect him. They trust him. They know he can swing momentum at any moment. And the value the Bears are getting from him? Unreal. He's on a 1-year deal worth barely over $1 million, and Chicago is only responsible for a fraction of that because of the way his contract was structured with Houston. For that price, the Bears are getting a veteran who can play safety, nickel, or outside corner, a true hybrid who understands Dennis Allen's system and can guide the younger players around him. People forget how good he's been throughout his career at taking the ball away. He's played in big moments. He's been part of winning teams. And Chicago needed exactly that kind of voice, someone who plays with emotion, brings intensity, and forces everyone around him to raise their level. Since he arrived, the secondary hasn't just improved, it's transformed. Energy, communication, swagger, he brought it all. And even when Jalen Johnson and Kyler Gordon return, Gardner Johnson isn't going anywhere. His impact is too big. His presence is too important. He's earned every snap he gets. He's not some veteran hanging on at the end of his career. He's 27. He's hungry. He's proving he belongs, and he's proving clubs were wrong to give up on him so quickly. Coming to Chicago didn't just revive his career, it added something this team was missing. And that's what makes these additions so impressive: real value, real production, and real heart from players who weren't even supposed to be the headline. Stay with me, because this season still has more surprises coming.